Okay na.
Okay na. Sorry. What's up, workaholics? You're here with us once again, Ces and Kiko, to talk about certain things when it comes to work, when it comes to burnout, and how to deal with that both in the context of marriage and even as individuals as well. And once again, if this has added value to you, if you've learned something from us, then feel free to subscribe, feel free to not subscribe. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that's a little bit different from what we usually talk about. It's still about burnout and how to avoid getting burnt out in life in general. But I think we really wanted to zero in on something that we realized has been such a big portion of our life outside of career and the workplace.
And this has been the first time that we're gonna talk about it.
And this is the first time that we're actually going to talk about something like this. So we're pretty excited. We're excited about this topic.
Excited?
So the topic today is how to avoid and how to deal with ministry burnout. For the longest time, we've been part of the ministry. Personally, for me, I've been part of the ministry since, as a volunteer anyways, since I was 13 years old. And then when Ces and I got married, I actually entered full-time ministry for a season, for 7 years, I think. And even until today, we're still part of the ministry. And it's been a joy, no? Don't get me wrong, we love the ministry. We love church. We love all of that. But to say that it's been perfect and we've been perfect through that season, nako, di talaga. And so one of the challenges that we've experienced many times was treading through the boundary of ministry burnout. And parang I think that's a topic that not a lot of people talk about because sometimes you think about ministry and you think, na, di ba ministry is supposed to be a delight, supposed to be enjoyable, you're serving God and all of that. And I get that. That's very true. But we also realize that even as people who are serving a perfect God, we are imperfect people that fall short in different times. We focus on the wrong things. We overwork ourselves. We take on false burdens, which we'll get in a little bit.
There is burnout in ministry. Just like work, it requires effort. So, hindi talaga may iwasan. There is a possibility that, you'll get burnout.
Hopefully, will the principles that we'll share will apply to both full-time ministry. So if you're someone who is in full-time ministry work now, whether you're a pastor or you're serving as part of the church leadership, or even for volunteers, if you're a small group leader, if you're a volunteer,
church leader.
Yeah, if you're a church leader. The reason why we want to talk about this is because not a lot of people talk about it. And I think it's a problem that's happening more and more. We're losing so many of the best leaders to burnout.
Volunteers.
Yeah, where a lot of pastors are falling to burnout. There was this one church, I'm not gonna mention which church, pero when I wrote my book, Break Conquering with Sabbath Rest, there was this big pastor who stepped down from the ministry. And the reason why was because he was overworked and was burnt out. And it's happening a lot right now in church. And I think that we should start talking about this more. And
really, and in our local context, pansin ko they do not open up to their pastors or their leaders that they get burned out.
Tama.
Tapos masyashock ka na lang, wala na sa church.
They stop attending, they stop volunteering. And there's this this false burden na hindi, I should not be burnt out and I should not tell anyone if I'm struggling in this area. There are certain things that we need to avoid and certain things that we need to stop doing. I think that's a very big chunk of it.
Each of us we have our own season. So, hindi all throughout the year parang rara ka sa church.
Right. And if you're here today and you're experiencing burnout in the ministry, number one, don't feel guilty. Don't feel condemned. Kasi that's just the best way for you to continue to burn out even more. Today, we want to talk about the three tips for you. I don't want to call it tips, but really 3 practices that will help you to avoid ministry burnout or lessen ministry burnout or even just manage. Parang let's take this one step at a time. So what's point number 1?
Choose your burdens.
Choose your burdens. When I think about burdens, it's the things that you take on. It's the responsibilities that you take on. Whether it's people or whether it's tasks in the church. Kasi there's only so much that you can do.
Yes.
Diba?
Natatawa ako.
Bakit?
Parang kasi I'm like the type that, okay, bala ka dyan. I don't care.
We do have to have, a certain level of balance. Yes, in the ministry, you want to get involved. Yes, you want to help. Pero to what extent?
Yes.
Diba? Kasi if ikaw na yung gumagawa ng lahat, that's also very it's not only unfair to you, it's unfair to people in the church. Because kung ikaw na yung...
I think it's unfair to yourself.
Yeah, first and foremost, it is very unfair to yourself. Because I believe that every single one of us, we do have a calling from the Lord to be part of the ministry. But there is one, two, or a few things, really, it really depends. But there are certain things that you are called to do. And the same way, there are also certain things that you are not called to do.
Exactly.
Diba? So, it's a matter of choosing your burdens. I'll give you an example. We get this feeling kasi minsan na parang, okay, kung small group leader ka, then you should invite everyone. And you should minister to everyone. You should counsel everyone. You should help everyone and give advice to everyone. If you're here and you're saying na, I'm juggling a full-time job, I'm
a full-time mom.
Full-time mom, you're raising kids, you're already doing your own thing. And then you have this false burden na, no, I have to have 3 different victory groups. And, victory groups talaga specific. Small groups. Kasi walang maglilid ng worship today. Rest ko ngayong week na to. Pero sige na lang kasi you have to start choosing your burdens because it's unfair to yourself.
Plus the time that you give to them, it robs away the time that you have to spend. Like for example, if you're a parent, it robs away the time that you're gonna spend with your kids or with your family.
Yeah, correct. And also, I think it's also unfair to other people. Kasi, for all you know, there are other people in the church who want to get involved.
Exactly.
Diba?
Tapos inaagawan mo na ng role.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we don't do it intentionally, pero in some way or another, yun yung nangyayari.
Unconsciously do it.
I remember this one principle kasi that one pastor really shared to me one time na in the context of service, no, when you're volunteering in the services, you have to intentionally show
services like worship services,
diba? Music team, ushering, preaching, and all of that. You have to intentionally show people the gaps, no, in volunteering. Of course, there are things na hindi dapat kailangan kulang gap. Like, the preaching of the word has to be there. The worship time has to be there. But let's say, for example, worship time. Yun, very common kasi yan. Hindi kasi kailangan full band tayo.
Okay.
So, what happens? Yung drummer natin, 5 services straight, every single week.
Grabe.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Diba? I mean, and number one, it's not really, there's nothing in the Bible that says that you have to worship full band. And people see na, kompleto naman pala yung worship team. Why should I volunteer?
Okay na sila.
Yeah, versus na minsan, it's good to show the gaps in the ministry. Kasi it tells people na we need you.
Yeah, and they rise up to,
right.
serve.
So choose your burdens. Kasi for all you know, you're taking on a burden or a role or a task that's not supposed to be for you. It's supposed to be for someone else. Pero now, they don't have the opportunity to step up. Because you're already there.
Andyan ka na.
So, time to let go, di ba? And that applies as well in small groups.
Hakot awards ka.
Hindi naman, okay naman minsan na you're passionate about the ministry. Pero if it's already a burden, and that's why we use the word burden, kasi if it becomes a burden, then maybe, just maybe, it's not for you. Because again, you have to realize, hindi naman ikaw yung savior ng church or ng world.
When you say burden, it's something that you don't enjoy.
Ministry should be a delight. So that's point number 1. Choose your burdens. What's point number 2?
2 is don't attach your identity to your performance.
Don't attach your identity to your performance. Now, why do you think that's important?
For example, I personally know some people na when they left the church, parang they don't know who they are anymore. When they, for example, pag tinanggal sila dun sa ministries nila, parang they feel really bad about it. That, they question themselves, bakit sila tinanggal?
Yeah. There's a very big difference kasi between what you do and who you are. The things that you do in ministry, that's what you do. I mean, and that's important. No? You're leading worship, you're leading small groups, you're ushering, you're helping in the tech ministry, whatever it is. You're a leader, whether full-time or you're a pastor. What you do is not always who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, there are identities that are non-negotiable. Number 1, you're a child of God, and a child never works for the favor of God. If you're trying to work for the favor of God, that's a sign for you that, okay, maybe my performance now is attached to my identity. And for me, as a preacher, parang that was a challenge for such a long time. Na if I have a bad preaching, then I did not honor God. And it makes you feel bad. It makes you feel guilty na I should have done better. I should have practiced more. I should have done this, should have done that. And don't get me wrong, I think it's good that you perform. But your performance should not be the measure of your worth. And I had to learn this the hard way because as a leader in church, I realized that the things I do aren't always, communicated well. Na you say one thing, pero iba pala yung pagtanggap ng isa. And sometimes you might think na, sa kanila na yun, that's their problem. But no, it's also a burden on leadership eh. Na you have to be careful what you're communicating, and especially in the area of performance. We would never measure the worth of our friends based on their performance. Na if you're a bad friend, then you're no longer gonna be part of my
Squad.
my squad, my circle. So same way with family. We never tell our daughter na because you had bad grades or you had you did this, do that, we love you less. And in the context of church, it's also very important because it's community. It's a community. First and foremost, the church is about relationships.
Yeah, I hope so. Pero the leadership, in every church is different. So sometimes, kaya nag-overperform yung leader or yung volunteer because, they wanted to win also the favor of the leaders or the pastors.
Yeah, that's true. This is something that we say lovingly to the pastors. No? And if this is you, again, no condemnation, no guilt.
Yes, that was just very straightforward, pero I don't mean anything.
Yeah, we've made this mistake many times. We're also learning. We're still...
Do you overperform?
Sometimes you ask so much from the people. You have to realize na if you're a leader, it's hard to say no to you
Yes.
Yeah, so you have to give them permission to say no. Na I'm learning more and more now na every single time I ask someone to do something, I always make sure na, is it okay? Make sure this is not affecting your job, this is not affecting your marriage, this is not affecting your relationship with your parents. Whether you help the church or not, you're still part of the church.
Yeah.
And you are still a valued member of the church. Parang ako, I'm very careful when I preach minsan na parang, yan, mga spectators, kayo, it's time for you to rise up and all of that. You have to be careful about that kasi you might also be communicating na if you're a spectator here, you're less important. Which is not true.
And I think, tama yan. And I think we have to stop, with this mindset now. We have to perform more to win the favor of the pastors. Because we are there not for the pastors.
Correct. Yeah, you're there for God. And if you're doing it for the leaders, if you're doing it for
pastors,
whether it's the pastor, the volunteer ministry head, or whoever it is, even for the congregation, even if you're a pastor, pwede namang baliktad eh. Yung pastor, you're trying to win the favor of your congregation. Na if it's for them, and your identity is attached, I'm a bad pastor because my preaching doesn't, people sleep in my preaching and all of that. I hope that you find ways to engage your congregation, don't get me wrong, but don't attach your identity on that.
You are there to serve God.
Yeah. Be the child of God. That's your number one role always in the church. And secondly is to be a brother and sister to someone. I think those are the most important things. What's number 3?
Keep the main thing the main thing.
The main
like
thing.
As we just mentioned, your relationship with God.
Correct. There are things in church that are negotiable, and there are things in church that are non-negotiable. I think the most obvious non-negotiable there is Jesus still the center of the church? If he still is, then church, you're doing a great job. We were having this conversation with Pastor Joe and Carla. And then the other time, the volunteers, they were having an event na parang they were telling Pastor Joe daw na, I feel so bad. Kasi yung name tags natin naka handwritten. Excellence is important. Pero keep the main thing. No, I mean, was Jesus honored in the event? Even though the name tags were handwritten. If God was honored, then good job, di ba?
Yeah.
If you were able to meet the objective, and that even I'm very careful about that. You have a quote. Kung sabihin na quota, but sometimes that's what it is. You have to have 100 attendees. Dapat 20 yung na-connect sa small group. And those are important numbers. We do to put a benchmark. Pero minsan you have to be careful with that din eh. Kasi what God measures isn't always what we measure. I mean, the main thing is, like what you said, about it's the relationship with God. If you help people grow in the relationship with God, then that's it. On top of your relationship with God, secondly, I think also is your relationship with other people.
Yeah, that's important also.
Na, say for example, you had the worst service in your life. You start to blame other people. Kasi si ganito. Hindi late kasi dumating, so we weren't able to practice well. Si pastor kasi nag-overtime.
And nawala na yung joy.
That's where the joy lives actually.
Kasi we are too focused on the performance. Yun nga, nawala na yung reason. Bakit nga, Bob? Why do we do that?
Any last thoughts? You wanna share?
Nana.
Ana. Baka may ma-offend pa tayo. If you're burnt out in ministry because of these reasons, I challenge you, no? I mean, it's going to be hard because maybe it's something that you've been doing for a long time. It really goes back to what is God's heart for the church? What is God's heart for you as an individual?
You have already the burnout in the ministry. For me, it's totally fine to pause.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, it doesn't mean that you need to leave the church. Pero for me, personally, it is okay to pause. Kasi
Good,
you cannot function well when you are burnt out.
Yeah.
You know, alam mo yun, when your cup is empty, you cannot perform. I mean, you cannot fill in the cup of other people also.
Yeah, you can only give what you have.
Yeah, personally, it's hard to, disciple people or invite people sa church if ikaw mismo, wala ka na. Kumbaga, withered ka ng plan.
Yeah.
So, it's hard. I mean, people look at your life also. If they see na you're not enjoying it, I mean, they're not gonna be part of it also. But if they see that you have the joy in serving, the ministry, I mean, people will come to you.
I'm sure there's more to be said and we'll probably create more content around how to...
Iba naman next time.
Yeah, probably we'll talk about other things in church. Realizing that more people need to hear this because, again, it's a topic that not a lot of people talk about. If you want to hear more content about that, let us know in the comment section. But thanks so much and we'll see you next time.